Does a 2-year-old game ever need a reprint or a redo? Hey, it's Chris. What are we talking about today? Should you back Puerto Rico? Puerto Rico, 1897. We're getting a 2-year-old game redone with new content, new art, and superfluous deluxifications. Should you get it? Let's talk. Let's go. The first question you have to ask yourself with a game like this, or with a campaign along these lines, I guess, when I see reprints, right? What's new? Why should I get this now? That's the question I always ask myself. What is the incentive to get it now on crowdfunding? Especially when you have a reprint that is 2 years old. This is not a game that was out of print. This is not a game that was necessarily even drab from the original versions, right? Versions already. Sort of like your, well, similarly, Castles of Burgundy. Mechanistically. Because that's always the big question, right? When you have a series of previous games from Awaken realms of the Nemesis Lockdown, Nemesis Retaliation, you see some flowing ambiguity of similarities and differences between said iterations. And so the first question was, well, Puerto Rico and Puerto Rico 1897, what's the difference mechanically speaking? Why should I get this one over one of the ones I can probably find a lot cheaper and a lot easier on the secondary market? There's no mechanical difference in the core of it. And 1897 just incorporated some of the previous expansions in the first place. So mechanically speaking, there's no reason in that particular way to get it, because it falls under the same trapping similarly of the dynamic that just happened retail wise in the last year with another reprint that actually really needed it because it was out of print, and that was El Grande. Because the easiest copy to get of El Grande on the secondary market was a big box version of it with multiple expansions. So where I'm going with this though, El Grande, the base game, is thought of as all you need. Puerto Rico 1897, including previous expansions but now available all in a small package at a retail side of things, is arguably going to be more content than you're ever going to need, because the big box of El Grande, no one ever uses the expansions. No one gets to the expansions in our hobby nowadays. Expansions are a tool to make you feel like you need more, but actually are never going to play more, but can spend more because the profit margin is better. So more content on a game that already includes some expansion content compared to the original one doesn't really, for me, pass the muster as a must be, right? It's not a base game with core mechanics removed that you're going to need them in. No, base game, very well thought of. Base game, extremely well thought of. Expansions already included in a retail side of things that weren't previously there. So giving me more, telling me that 4 expansions, or whatever it is, I'm making that number up off the top of my head right now, so don't hold me to that, asterisks, isn't enough, and I need a 5th to complete me. Well, truth be told, when was the last time you had more than one expansion that was needed? I'll wait, right? Name me more than 5 games, because I guarantee that 1 or 2 of you in the comment section will be like, well, Chris, this was the 3rd expansion for this niche game that you've never heard of that completed it. And again, what I'm saying though, sarcasm aside, it needs to be the rule rather than the exception. You should be able to name it as the rule that it's needed, rather than I can name a couple games that are the exception, especially on crowdfunding. The other thing, when I look at games, again, as a routine part of my evaluation, how accessible is the game? How easy is it going to be to get to the table? Let's compare this to my Castles of Burgundy copy, which is fantastically produced, right? No one can question that. I don't have any questions about this one as well. But the accessibility of Castles of Burgundy right? With the invention of deluxified everything in premium components, with the advent of super deluxe trays to store everything in their own little niche compartment all over the place, right? Like you're a mad scientist allocating secret ingredients into the box in their very special locations. The setup and teardown of that isn't getting any faster necessarily. I'd argue that with such specialization and customization, at some points, it starts tipping the curve the other way. You can start organizing it and it gets easier and easier, and the setup time goes down and down, but then it's so niche and you have to find so many pieces and take them out from so many different areas and combine them back into the other that it starts going back up the other way. And that's kind of what Castles of Burgundy did, right? Those castle tiles, they're acrylic, they're so nice. Miniatures? WTF, right? That makes it just clunky. Again, to not overkill the word here, unaccessible, right? They're miniatures for the sake of miniatures, when acrylic tiles will more than suffice. It gets in the way, right? You can make an argument with other miniature-based games, Primal or Marvel United or your Zombicides or your Nemesis. Like, it's not actively getting in the way. Like, Cthulhu Death May Die may get in the way a little bit because the miniatures are too big for the tile spaces. But that's more of what you've got going on with Castles in Burgundy. And so when I see these over-deluxified boats with fruit resources that just look like they are going to create havoc of any tipping over, managing, handling, that I feel like that's going to look really nice if you were taking board game pictures of it. But for the actual practicality of utilization on the table, it feels like it's going to slap me in the face and be contrary to that. I'm all for double layer player boards, don't get me wrong. I'm all for, better iconography and placement of wording when necessary to explain what is not well explained otherwise. But the other question I have to ask in a game like this, as someone who is not extensively familiar with the previous iterations, right? One of the key features is listed as increased tile size, better readability, 30% increased. Well, I can understand where something like Hamburg, the remake of Bruges from Queen Games, where the iconography was just a cluster F. You really wanted the text versions as well. But I also, in my perusing, didn't see that this was necessarily a huge issue in the first place. So it's kind of like saying, well, it wasn't a problem, Chris, but we're telling you that we made something that wasn't a problem better. You fixed a problem that wasn't there to begin with. So I guess that's the question, right? And then not only are you fixing something that didn't need to be there in the first place, you're charging me more for it. It reminds me more of when Ludus Magnus and Black Rose Wars first came out, and they said, hey guys, we made the stretch goal box 20% bigger. I'm making that number up. But I remember that. And then they also said, hey guys, by the way, we're going to charge 50% more for shipping. Because they threw in stuff that they thought was nice. It's more like Poots with KDM. I'm going to get myself in some trouble here with some KDM lovers here in the comment section. But when the guy just puts in more and more stuff and the delay becomes not just weeks or months, but years, because you can't do less. You just feel like you have to do more and more and more. There's a reason the phrase less is more is true, because sometimes it mother frickin' is. Gambler's Chest is more for the sake of more in a lot of ways. Yeah, fight me in the comment section down below. And that's what I have to look at with the miniatures stuff here. Now, again, you can buy it separate. But the reason it's there is because this also preys on FOMO, that your game isn't going to be completely, beautifully, aesthetically as pleasing if you don't FOMO out on including this. You're going to be left incomplete. That is the quiet part said out loud on these overly deluxified crowdfunding campaigns nowadays. The boxes, the literal boxes, are getting bigger and bigger. My Andromeda's Edge just came in the mail prior to filming this. That thing is about 50% bigger than I thought it was going to be. And truth be told, right now, when I ordered it and backed it, having some feelings. When I just got it and it's sitting out in my entryway, I have the opposite feelings, and they are not positive feelings about how big this is. I'm feeling bad about that. And that is my fear with something like this. And then going back to the accessibility, you can't take this game anywhere. You can't lug it around. You've got 2 huge boxes of stuff that's essential then. And it doesn't make it any more feasible. And truth be told, I'm not even talking about the actual worker miniatures here that are just going to get in the way even more than the boats and the acrylic, resources. And you can get your coins that are going to be fantastic and your 1 expansion, 2 expansion, 3 expansion, 4. But that's already coming now in the Merchant's Pledge with 3 boxes. That's my biggest criticism of Marvel United. Again, not trying to be a total hypocrite here, but I'll call out one of my favorite games and its big criticism. When my kids go, I want to be this guy and this guy, I have to get out 3 boxes in order to play 1 game. That's not appealing on a regular basis, however good the game is. That's why, frankly, the last time they asked, I almost did not want to play it with them whatsoever, as one of my favorite games of all time. 3D terrain. 3D terrain and Euro games, in my opinion, should never mix, but you can get that too on this campaign. And if this is the end-all be-all game for you, you can spend $300, including shipping at the time of me filming this. Or you can buy it for $40 at retail and get almost the exact same thing gameplay-wise right now. That brings up an interesting point though, right? Where is the inflection point at cost creep? When a game for a very similar, almost exactly identical mechanistic approach starts approaching tenfold the amount that you could get it for otherwise, at what point do you draw the line? And we're seeing that being tested all the time, and this is the latest test of that on the crowdfunding market. And apparently 8-fold isn't enough. 8-fold is not enough to make people balk or waver at it at this point. Now, again, I'm not going to argue that you're not getting some good stuff with this as well. I mean, if you're a solo junkie, well, there's not enough strictly solo games out there, so now you can get your solo mode for this game as well. So if you really were interested, again, this probably is a great way to get it. If you want to have a new modified game mode and new building tiles for a game that's already being told to me is one of the best games of all time, again, can you improve on perfection? It reminds me of Ra with the recent crowdfunding campaign with Ra Traders expansion. Is more better? Can you improve on a design that is that good? We're going to see that in the very near future when Roxley is going to put out another edition of Brass. And that is going to be highly and heavily scrutinized as right now the #1 game on Board Game Geek. Can you make a game better than the #1 game on Board Game Geek? Can you improve on this with new modes or mechanics? I don't know, folks. I don't know. Are you willing to spend money on it right now to find out? Not tried and true in that sense, completely untested and unknown. Are you willing to shell out money in that way, right? Hopium springs eternal. I saw that with another crowdfunding campaign. They were like, hey, what do you think about this? And I was like, hey, you know what? There's 3 other games that already do stuff like this. There's a ton more detail, and you don't have to wonder with the first designer whether or not you're actually going to get when you're going to get it and how it's going to look in the end product. Because we've all seen the prototypes and the preview videos that make something look awesome, and then they turn out, well, not exceed or even reach our expectations in the first place. So new modes, high risk, high reward when you're already telling me that just the game alone is already that well thought of. So there you go. Puerto Rico. How do you feel about them apples? Check it out. Stay classy. Subscribe if you want. I made it this far. Thumb it. Apparently thumbing it helps algorithm junk. I don't know. Peace out. See you around.